Yo, what up, a-holes? It's your boy, Erik Levi, the Holistic A-Hole, coming at you today with a new video. Today, I want to talk all about the recent recall of the popular over-the-counter stomach acid-suppressing drug, Zantac, what that means for you, why it's being recalled, and how you can actually holistically improve your digestion while keeping your stomach acid fully intact. Zantac is being recalled because recently it was noticed by a third-party laboratory that the active drug Ranitidine, which is basically the drug that makes Zantac or gives Zantac its stomach acid-suppressing properties, was found to actually include a high level of a very well-known carcinogen known as NDMA. And no, this is not MDMA, the party drug. This is NDMA, which is such a known carcinogen that it's actually used in lab rats to induce cancer during scientific research studies. And they actually found a very high amount of this compound. 3 milligrams was found by this third-party lab. They are called, what is their name? They are called Valisure. They're an ISO-accredited lab, and they found that in Ranitidine, again, the active drug that you're going to find in the drug Zantac, they found about 3 milligrams of this carcinogenic compound, NDMA, in Ranitidine. Now, just to give you some kind of context here, the FDA-approved level of NDMA in anything, let's bring that up here, is actually, as you can see, 96 nanograms per day. So, I'm not going to lie, I'm not a mathematician here, but I did some research, and basically 96 nanograms translates into several 100,000 times less than 3 milligrams of what you're finding in Zantac. So this is a very high amount of a carcinogenic compound you're finding in a very popular drug that is, again, available over the counter. So, so why do people take Zantac? What is the deal with Zantac? So Zantac is actually an H2 blocker, okay? And so in the stomach acid suppressing drug world, there's 2 different types of acid suppressing drugs. You have H2 blockers, which block the histamine producing or gastric acid being produced through histamine, and then you have proton pump inhibitors, which basically quell the production of stomach acid in your stomach. Both of which are doing essentially the same thing. It's just proton pump inhibitors are available by prescription, are known as being more effective at doing this, a little bit more potent than H2 blockers. But proton pump inhibitors also come with a heavier load of side effects. And you only really want to use that if you are in dire need of stomach acid relief, which many people are. Let's face it, stomach acid is a huge problem for so many people, especially people who are still on the standard American diet. Because as we know, the standard American diet is very highly acidic. It's full of all kinds of stomach homeostasis disrupting agents. You have all kinds of chemicals in these foods. You have GMOs. You have just a lot of bad stuff that produces unwanted digestive effects. I would say, really digestive problems for most Americans is where most chronic disease starts from. And as we learn more about how the microbiome works, we do find that at the base root of so much chronic disease are issues with the gut microbiome. And of course, the gut microbiome all starts with the function of the stomach. Really, your ability to break down food in your stomach is the most important part of how your stomach functions. Because if you're not breaking down food in your stomach, well, then the food goes in your stomach, and this is where you start getting problems because you're not getting food broken down. It's causing all kinds of havoc in your stomach. A lot of people start experiencing things like ulcers, acid reflux, and that's just at the top. Then you start getting down into the small intestines. People start growing bacteria in the small intestine where you're not supposed to be growing bacteria, known as small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. And as you get down the line, you start dealing with issues with the colon. You start dealing with Crohn's and colitis and irritable bowel syndrome and all these different disorders. But really, it all starts at the top. It all starts up here in the stomach. And so the ass backwards methods of solving stomach problems that we have here in the American medical system is, well, if somebody is experiencing things like acid reflux or stomach ulcers or stress-induced ulcers, then what we do is we give them an acid-suppressing drug because, logically, that would make sense, right? Too much stomach acid, what do? We get rid of the stomach acid, right? It's a pretty logical conclusion. Unfortunately, that's not how the stomach works. And anybody, I hate to say this, but anybody in the alternative health space, no matter what your dietary preferences are, most people understand this. Most people understand that for you to properly break down food and have a functioning digestive system, that you actually need stomach acid. And so what happens is, in the case of stomach acid not working correctly, is you start getting things like acid reflux. Why? It's not because you have too much stomach acid. It's because you got this thing called an esophageal sphincter. And it's a little flap. It's like a little flap right here that connects your esophagus to your stomach. And essentially what happens is after years and years of, let's just call it like it is, bad dietary habits, the sphincter starts to lose its ability to properly close. So again, when you start feeling stomach acid in your esophagus, it's not there because stomach acid is bubbling up out of your stomach because you have too much of it. It's bubbling up because the sphincter, the gate, is not closing. And there's a number of reasons for this. Again, diet is probably the most common reason, but inappropriate dietary practices along with the foods. You have processed foods, highly acidic foods like processed foods, fried foods, refined carbohydrates. A lot of beverages are responsible for this. Things like excessive coffee consumption, carbonated beverages like soda, alcohol, even teas, anything really other than water, on top of the fact that people will drink this stuff while they're eating. So essentially what happens is you pour a highly acidic substance down your throat. It neutralizes the stomach acid. The sphincter doesn't get the message whether to close or not. And then you start eating food. And when you start eating food and the stomach doesn't have the message to actually start producing stomach acid, well, this is where things start kind of going crazy, right? Imagine if you took like a 2-liter bottle of soda and just shook it up and then pulled the cap off. Essentially, that's what's happening in your stomach. The cap comes off and then the acid starts going up your esophagus. And that's where you start to feel things like heartburn, acid reflux, GERD, and stomach ulcers happen basically the other way, where when food goes in, because again, the stomach isn't properly producing the acid to break down the food. The food in your stomach is not being broken down properly. And as it works its way down through your pyloric sphincter, which is the bottom part of your stomach, into your small intestines, unbroken down food starts to wreak havoc on the lining of your gut wall, and it starts to physically irritate the lining of your gut. And so this is where you start to feel things like ulcers. Now, what is probably the biggest reason for stomach acid not working correctly? Well, the biggest reason is that is stress. Is when you eat stressed, when you're in a constant state of stress, you put your central nervous system into fight or flight, into sympathetic nervous system. okay? And when you're in sympathetic nervous system, basically all the blood leaves your digestive tract and goes out to where it's needed, your limbs, your brain, all over your body, except for where it's needed at the time that you have food in there, which is your stomach. So again, this is another reason why your stomach isn't getting the support. Okay, so that was a long rant on proper digestion. Now, the problem with Zantac that they found was this ranitidine compound contained high levels of this substance, NDMA, right? And NDMA, highly carcinogenic substance, to the point where Zantac, or the manufacturer of Zantac, they did not want to recall this compound. It took several months for them to actually recall this, and even the FDA did not act so quickly until there was lots of pressure from different media sources. Basically, the scientists over at this lab, Valisure, started going around and doing interviews on very popular podcasts, on very popular news networks, to the point where the FDA finally had no choice. And one of the biggest reasons people believe this happens has to do with the overall drug approval process that we have here in this country. You see, many of the drugs that come into the American medical system, into the pharmaceutical industry, a lot of those are made, especially the generics, are made over in China and in India. And there's a book that recently came out by an author named Catherine Eban. I think I'm getting her name right. I believe it's called Bottle of Lies. And she writes all about the shenanigans that goes on in the generic pharmaceutical industry. And so what happens is a lot of these pharmaceuticals are made in China, in India, and nothing against China and India. In fact, very good food, both countries. However, the pharmaceutical production processes are a little on the corrupt side, to the point where when these drugs say that they have quality control guidelines, well, what's happening is those quality control guidelines are being managed in the facilities that they're made in. The drug companies themselves are the ones doing the inspections of the products. And some of you are like, Eric, I don't understand why that's a big deal. Well, if you were accused of a crime and you said, look, I understand I'm accused of a crime, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll investigate the crime myself, and then I'll come back and tell you guys what I find. What are the odds you think that a drug company, under those circumstances, are going to come back and report any impurities in their final product? Especially when we're talking about drugs. Especially when we're talking about drugs like stomach acid suppressing drugs that are very highly profitable in the United States. So you have this really unruly drug inspection process that happens. And so what you get then is you get these carcinogenic compounds that begin to get discovered in these products. And the only reason this even came about in this specific product was because doctors were starting to notice that patients were not responding well to the H2 blockers, the Zantac that they were getting. They would find that people were coming back with very bad adverse reactions. I believe I don't know if people were actually getting cancer, but because of these reactions, this led a lab like Valisure to actually come about. Now, Valisure is fairly new. I believe they came about in 2018, but they came about with they were founded by a number of or by several doctors who made sure that they got state-of-the-art equipment. They're an ISO certified laboratory to be able to measure the actual products at the end of the supply chain, okay? So the FDA does not inspect every single pill that goes out onto the market. They basically take the word of the drug manufacturer that the inspection is done, and then that's how they approve. They don't actually do the inspections themselves. So this is why you need third-party inspections to actually be able to inspect drugs and make sure that they should be put out on the market in the first place. Now, the scary thing is is we don't know what other drugs out there have these same problems. Because if this is the process by which drugs are being approved, then who knows? Who knows what you're actually taking? You know what I mean? Are we all taking stuff? I mean, not me. I don't take drugs. But, well, most drugs. Drugs for problems like stomach acid. Okay, there's some drugs. Well, there's no drugs. There's no pharmaceutical drugs. The drugs I get, you cannot get at a pharmacy. You can grow them in your backyard. Enough said. So the problem is do we know the extent of this problem? And what's starting to really come to light are the impurities in a lot of these issues. So when it comes to something like stomach acid blockers, there's been a lot of research, even without this whole issue that we're talking about here, to lead you to believe that if you were actually paying attention to the research, which I know it's hard to do, but if you were actually paying attention to the research, you would know that stomach acid blockers, not really that effective. In fact, quite overprescribed in many instances. So let me actually bring up a few of these studies. So you have, let's see what we got here. Let me bring up this study. So we have one study here out of the University of Texas Tech that basically shows that 88.5% of the medications of these acid suppressive therapy medications were given inappropriately to patients who were at extremely low risk of gastrointestinal bleeding. So these guys, they tested the efficacy, and they tested the rate at which these acid suppressive drugs are being prescribed to patients, and they basically found that in almost 9 out of 10 patients, the therapy was completely inappropriate. And to go on top of that, by simply not prescribing that medication, the hospital was able to save themselves $114,000 just in dealing with complications and then subsequent more therapies that are needed because of these complications. There's another study here I have. This one is out of Ohio, where basically they pretty much say the same thing, that a number of patients are getting these, in this case, proton pump inhibitors that actually came with a greater risk of GI hemorrhage, pneumonia, and Clostridium difficile infection. So again, doctors are telling you to take these acid suppressive drugs because they know you're suffering, they know you're in pain, but they just don't know the right way to solve it. This is the problem with the entire medical system. You have 15 minutes to go see your doctor, and your doctor has to give you not just an explanation of why you have, well, I should say this, most doctors don't give you an explanation as to why you have problems with stomach acid. What they'll do is they'll say, well, you got stomach acid. You go, yes, I have stomach acid. You know you have stomach acid. You have it every single day. You have it when you wake up in the morning. You have it when you eat. And then you have it when you go to bed, and you're suffering. And your doctor will tell you, he'll go, look, here's a script for Prilosec, or he'll recommend Zantac, which is over the counter. Now, the funny thing is the FDA, when they approved Zantac, when they approved Ranitidine, they basically said that this treatment should not be used for any more than 2 weeks. And because it's over the counter, most people aren't aware of this. Most people are taking this stuff on a daily basis. So not only are they overusing this very popular drug treatment, but at the same time, they're using it for way too long. A very dangerous thing with a very dangerous compound, carcinogenic compound. Now again, I'm not saying that if you take Zantac, you're going to get cancer. We have no proof of that. We just know that there's a very high amount of a very highly carcinogenic substance in this medication. So what does this all come down to for me, your boy, the holistic a-hole, the inconvenient truth of health, the mommy blogger with balls? Well, what I like to say is if you have problems with stomach acid, what you need to do is you need to figure out ways to solve it holistically. Okay. Now, some of you are kind of scared of that word holistic, right? What am I going to prescribe you some witchcraft? Am I going to make you go do a rain dance? Not at all. In fact, stomach acid is one of the most highly studied methods of using alternative medicine to solve your problems, one of which being excessive stomach acid, GERD, acid reflux, heartburn. Now, like I said at the beginning, you have to control stomach acid, and you have to use stomach acid to your best ability. You need stomach acid to break down food that you eat, because if you're not breaking down food, then this is where the complications come in your stomach. So one of the best ways to generate stomach acid without spending really any money is through things like apple cider vinegar. Okay, a lot of people make a big deal about apple cider vinegar, say it's this miracle thing, it can cure all this stuff. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I think the benefits of apple cider vinegar are a little overrated. But one of the number one things it does, and I use apple cider vinegar every day myself for this, is to help produce digestive enzymes in your stomach. Okay, so what you want to do is 20 to 30 minutes before you eat, you want to take a shot, like a cap of apple cider vinegar, mix it in a little bit more water. So for like one cap, take like 3 to 5 caps of water and suck that down. Okay. Wait 20, 30 minutes and then you eat. Okay. This is going to help over time improve your digestion. Another thing you need to do is you need to rehab your stomach acid. You need to make stomach acid yourself. You need to make hydrochloric acid. And the ingredients to making hydrochloric acid are zinc, vitamin B1, and vitamin B6. So if you take a good multivitamin from a reputable seller, and this multivitamin includes zinc, B1, and B6, which most multivitamins do, you're going to get this right nutrition. I would not encourage anybody to take zinc or B1 or B6 in isolation, because usually these supplement companies formulate it to the right ratios, because if you start taking things, especially like zinc, you could start throwing off other micronutrients in your body like copper and what's the other one? Several other different minerals in your body react with zinc. So you want to take a good multivitamin every single day, take it with food, because again, this is going to help increase your stomach acid production. And the other thing I would say do is take a hydrochloric acid tab, okay? Now that sounds scary because we think about hydrochloric acid, that's your stomach acid, okay? But, if you take if you took actual hydrochloric acid, like in a bottle, you could burn a hole right through the bottom of your floor. Fortunately, most hydrochloric acid tabs are food-based. They come usually from citrus. So, a good hydrochloric acid tab can come from a supplement company like Pure Encapsulations. I believe Thorne makes one. Biotics Research makes one that I personally take. And then you want to take those after you eat. Okay, so you want to take a hydrochloric acid tab. Usually I'll tell people to do a thing called the hydrochloric acid, the HCl challenge, which is where you figure out your own specific dose. If you have any questions about how to do that, feel free to message me on Twitter at HolisticAhole. I'm happy to walk you through that process. But this is how you're going to take those after you eat to produce the stomach acid you need. Okay, and as you produce more stomach acid, believe it or not, it's going to actually fix your acid reflux. I know it sounds crazy to think about, but this is the ass backwards way your body works sometimes. More hydrochloric acid, more stomach acid actually helps you control the excessive amount of hydrochloric acid you have that is causing your acid reflux and all of your stomach acid related problems. Now, let's say you're like, Holistic A-hole, I don't know if I trust you. I don't know if I trust these recommendations. I don't know if I'm down with throwing a substance in my mouth that could burn a hole through the bottom of my floor. I 100% understand that. So here's what I would say do. You got to change your eating habits. All right? It's going to be kind of crazy, but you don't want to drink fluid when you eat, right? you want to actually hold off drinking anything, usually about 30 minutes before you eat, and 30 minutes to an hour after you eat. Because what happens is, again, you have these digestive enzymes that are triggered by cells in your stomach lining. And this is what helps you break down food. This is what helps you produce the right amount of stomach acid. I should also mention, too, that excessive amounts of stomach acid that lead to things like acid reflux come from overeating. And a lot of times overeating comes from your body not properly breaking down food and absorbing nutrients. So your body is getting food, but it doesn't recognize it has the right nutrients because it's not being broken down. You're full, but you're starving to death, right? So you have to eat nutrient-dense food, and you have to properly have it digest. So if you're the type of person who likes a coffee and donut, that's not going to work, all right? If you're the type of person who likes to drink soda or drink a beer or drink coffee when you eat, that's not going to work. You have to keep that stuff away from the food you eat, because what you're doing is you're diluting all the digestive enzymes. You have to actually let this process work itself. So don't drink any fluids while you eat, okay? And two last things. The other one I'll say is make sure that you don't eat in a stressed out state. So a lot of people are eating in the car, they're eating at their desk at work, you're eating after fighting. A huge problem are people eating while scrolling through the phones or watching TV or watching very triggering YouTube videos from people like me. And this makes you mad, and it puts you in a fight or flight state. And what you want to do is you want to avoid that. So when you eat, as corny as this sounds, turn on some soft music. Eat in the company of people that you like. Have an enjoyable conversation. Or if you're the type of person who likes to eat while listening to things like podcasts, I would say listen to a comedy podcast, like The Holistic A-Hole. And the best thing you could do is actually laugh, because laughing means you're in a parasympathetic nervous state, which means your body is very relaxed, very calm. All the blood is in your digestive tract, and you're going to properly break down the food. And the last thing I'm going to tell you here, which is going to holistically fix your digestion, is to make sure you chew your food. Most problems with digestion start because people are not chewing their food. It's the most basic, most simple way to fix your digestion. Think about it. There's no teeth in your stomach. Your teeth is just solely, or your stomach is just solely reliant on this stomach acid that we've been talking about for this whole video. The problem is many people's stomach acid is completely unregulated, to the point, again, where your esophageal sphincter is not closing properly. So if that's happening, what you need to do is you need to help your stomach out by properly chewing food. And when I say properly chew, you're going to hate me for this, but you got to chew your food. I mean, we're talking like 30 bites per chew, and it can get kind of exhausting. But you'll notice two things. As you start to implement this, you'll start to notice, A, your digestion is improving. After you eat, you're not burping, you're not farting, you're not getting acid reflux, and you'll notice you start getting fuller faster. You'll start to notice that, hey, as you eat and as it takes you a little bit longer to eat, you're starting to get full, so it's helping you to not overeat. And the crazy thing is a byproduct of this might be actually losing weight. It's crazy, but I would give it a try if I were you. If you're the type of person who deals with bad or high amounts of stomach acid, let me know in the comments. Is Zantac being pulled off the counter going to be a problem for you? Are you the person who has been on Zantac for a while and have noticed any adverse effects? Or have you had success stories with getting off of things like Zantac or proton pump inhibitors and actually improving your digestion and your overall health? Also, make sure you remember to hit that subscribe button, subscribe to the channel. We got new videos coming out all throughout the week. And go on over to your favorite podcast player, subscribe to the Holistic A-Hole podcast, where I repost many of these videos, and you can listen to it on the go. Or, dare I say, while you eat. Thanks so much for watching the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Spread it to those you love. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.